Good evening, guys. 4-6, right? 6 minutes past 4. How's everyone doing? Let me wait and let Instagram tell you guys that we're live. We're about to probably have one of the best conversations that we have ever had. Let's do a quick roll call. Jifa Grace here and live. Anna Angel, let us know where you're joining us from. Let us know your name. Let us know your country, your city, your hood. Paul Marvin is here. Ronald has been waiting since 3:30. Anna Angel is also here. Nee Bernard Nee, good to see you. Nana Bedu is here as well. I also have Arthur, Meryl Arthur, Alexandra O. Ifya Regal, Miss Monette. Let us know where you're coming from. Somebody's joining us from Leeds, United Kingdom. Anna is from Germany. I am Ken Solo. Good to see you. Let us know where you're joining us from. Vusi will be joining us pretty shortly. We'll be having that conversation. Accra, Ghana is in the building. Dele is here too. Hi, Dele. From South Africa, Insika Shembe. I hope I got that. We have Ruin from France. Sami the author is from Ghana. Accra City, Tema, Ghana. Vusi is here now, guys. So we're gonna go live now. Alexandra O is all the way from so let's try and get our guest for the day. Waiting for him to join now, guys. Hey, Vusi.
King K!
How long has this been coming?
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. It's been an absolute minute. So good to have you here. It's like in my network, I sent you something on IG. I don't know if you saw it. When I posted it on LinkedIn, somebody said having Vusi on your life is like having two Santas for Christmas.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Great to have you. Let me do an introduction. I know
I'm busy putting some cappuccino in my thing, so carry on while you do the intro.
Do that. We're gonna take our time and have this conversation. So I would do an introduction. Vusi is here, guys, and this is happening in real time. This is happening in real time. We have people joining us from all over the place. Vusi, I've seen Tanzania, I've seen Zimbabwe, I've seen UK. I've seen different people joining us. So if you needed an introduction for Vusi, even though you don't, because I can just send you to Google. I've been following him for 7 years now. So for those of you content, Vusi is the reason why I decided to even take public speaking or any of the things that I'm doing serious, right? So everybody says, oh, when I posted the flyer. Finally, people said when I saw your mannerisms, I could tell there was Vusi there. You have absolutely no idea. So for the last 7 years, I have followed this man. I have learned from him. I've looked at the work that has really inspired my journey. Two-time world champion, public speaking, 2 times. You guys need to know. And he still holds the world record in the 5-minute category. The impromptu, he didn't get it. According to the last interview, if you try him today, he will finish you in that part as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't need to bore you. He's a venture capitalist. He's probably the highest paid and most sought after public speaker in Africa. He's about to make a transition to the United States. We'll talk about that as well. Ghana, Africa, all over the world. Let us welcome Vusi Thembekwayo to Global Conversations, guys.
King K, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
How has it been?
It's been, it's been interesting, right? It's a great time to grow and a great time to metamorphosize into whatever we're becoming.
Yeah. And you in January you had gone to the States and you had gotten an offer, so you're obviously in a transition period. And then it just gets knocked in the middle. How does that feel? It's
almost as if you were in the conversation I was having yesterday. So for me, I'm very spiritual about things, Kwame. So when things happen, I always try to look for the deeper reasons, and sometimes there is no deeper reason. But one of the blessings of coronavirus for me has been that it forced me to deal with some of the things that I was running away from. You know, so I've spent the past couple of weeks just making sure that I'm tidying up where I need to tidy up, making sure that I'm putting in systems where I need to put in systems, realizing that a lot of my businesses are very manual and very people intensive, so trying to automate as much as possible, bring in technology, because I think that's going to be the future. So yeah, I mean, I'm you know, I'm spiritual about these things, and I've just allowed the process to happen as the process happens. I don't fight, you know, I don't fight gravity, because you lose.
Yeah, sounds absolutely excellent then. So today's conversation, we'll have it in three dimensions. One, we would of course talk to young people who are looking to build businesses and what they can do in this season. In my part of the world, especially here in Ghana, a lot of small businesses have closed already.
Yeah.
Yes, I think somewhere last week I got the inside information that one of the big retail outlets, you know, something like our version of Amazon here in Ghana, they have 100 people in the office. They let 50 of them go. The entire marketing team is now 2 people. They used to be 9, right? And so there's a real conversation that we need to have around what young people can do. The second dimension of this conversation would be how do we really raise leaders to solve Africa's problem? And then the third part, finally wrapping it up, will just, for me, from a personal point of view, also because I have a lot of people who follow me who want to take public speaking and stuff like that. So we'll touch a little bit of that industry and what it looks like and the shenanigans involved. But my first question to you will be, what do I do as a small business, as a startup, as an SME in this COVID season? What are my options? How do I stay stealth? And how do I survive it so that I can thrive and not be reduced when this is over?
So, I mean, that's a great question. Let me first, before I answer you, just say that I don't have all the answers. I'll offer, you know, kind of what I know, what I've seen people doing, what works and what doesn't. But I think everybody listening to this needs to take it with a pinch of, make sure it works for you. So, just as a general rule, it's a bad idea to fight forces of nature. You don't win that war, right? So coronavirus, COVID-19, and its impact on our economies is a force of nature. You can't fight it. You can't pretend it's not there. And you have to I think you have to make adjustments. So the question was, what can you do?
Yeah.
The first thing I think is look internal and look at what you have already been doing. And you have to ask yourself probably the most difficult question in the world, which is this. Is this what I should be doing?
No way.
Because I think a lot of us are doing things that we were doing just because we were doing them, but we're not doing them because there's a calling anymore, because we're passionate about it anymore, right? So, you know, just think about, is this what you should be doing? Is this the best use of your time? Is it the best use of your talents? Is it the best use of your networks? Is it the best use of your ability? Is it the best use of you? So look internal. And that's why I love the idea of lockdown, the idea of isolation, the idea of spending time with me so that I can present a better me to the world. I love that. And I think if I was a young person out there experiencing what's happening out there, if I'm an entrepreneur out there experiencing what's happening out there, that's what I would say to you that you should do. Look internal, look within, and try to get you right, because you can't fix the world.
So we start from looking internally. I had this conversation with a team when this thing started, that everybody who's been running away from their demons will now be faced to deal with those demons, right?
Yeah.
There's no escape now. You know, there's no escape now. But practically, the thing that I wanted us to really hit on, because it's something I think resonates with both of us, which is the crossroads between business and technology, is all of a sudden, anybody who was treating technology as a side thing, as a thing for the young people, you know, has sort of been forced. There's a joke that I put on every time I speak about this. Men of God used to say Facebook was antichrist. It looks like Facebook gave its life to Christ now, so they're all on it, and they're streaming their services. What does it mean, the shift to digital that we're seeing? Is it for everybody? And what would it look like tomorrow? Would this become the new normal? What are we expecting?
It's definitely the new normal. It's definitely the new normal, and it's definitely for everybody. So the question, I think, for people is not whether or not digital is for you. The question is which part of digital is for you.
It's for you.
I think that's absolutely the question you've got to ask yourself. So, if you are a professional, then maybe the part of your life that's about networking and building relationships goes digital. If you're an entrepreneur, the part of your life that's about building a business, building a brand, and building a value chain, that might be about going digital. If you're a large corporate, the part about brand management and extending your networks to helping communities and your social impact, that could go digital. So the question for me, for any person through the season, is not is digital for me. It's which part of digital is for me, and how do I activate that? How do I make that authentic, and how do I reach as many people as possible? You have to remember, it's never before happened, Kwame, that you and I can be in completely different countries, tens of thousands of kilometers away, and have a conversation that is almost instantaneous to the second. Yeah. It's never before happened, never. Right? And that brings with it massive opportunities that I think we need to exploit. So absolutely, everybody should be coming on to digital. Absolutely.
Awesome. The next one, which has become a real problem, if we were in the office, it would be an HR problem. Now it looks like it's a leadership problem. How do you manage people when they are not in the same building?
Well, that's a fantastic question. I think for many of us who've been managing people, actually, what we liked is we used to thrive under the illusion of control. Mm-hmm. And I see the illusion of control because you have the idea that if somebody's in front of you, they must be working. And if they're working, they're being productive. And if they're being productive, you're paying them for what they're doing. Yeah. And so there's this massive illusion built on what I call presentivism, which is the idea that you must be present at work, right? HR has needed to make this shift for a really, really long time. I remember talking in conferences in Europe in the early 2000s, and they were already talking about Web 2.0 and how to take your workforce online. Listen, man, technology has never been the problem. Human beings were. And we're realizing this with coronavirus. The technology was always available. Yeah. We were the problem. We were the ones who weren't doing what needed to be done, right? So I think if you're a leader managing people in this age, there are great opportunities. And I'm going to mention just three. The first is the recognition that you're now having to look at the people you've got around you and ask yourself, are these the right people? Because of the fact that you're worried about are your people working means you should be asking yourself questions about whether or not you've got the right people on the boat. The second is, have I given these people clarity in terms of what we're doing so that they know what to do, independent of my having to instruct them, right? And then the third is, do these people believe in the mission of what we're on? And I think a lot of us, have done this thing where we've built a business and the business became the product, and we didn't communicate to people the reason to believe. We didn't communicate to them what we were trying to do. We didn't communicate to them our core being. What I call, I call this in our firm the 21 grams. I'll tell you where that comes from. Mm-hmm. There's a scientist, I forget his name now, who at the turn of the century before last, around the 1800s, he wanted to know the weight of the soul. And he sat next to people who were dying, over 1,000 people who were dying. And he weighed them just before death, and he weighed them after death. And he found that the average weight loss after the person died was 21 grams. And he resolved that the weight of the soul must be 21 grams. Now, if you think about it, I'm a big guy. I'm 108, 109 kilograms. The very idea that actually the core essence of me is 21 grams. It's a percent of a percent. Yeah. And I think leaders in businesses do exactly the same thing. We start focusing on the big body that is the organization, the big body that is the people, the big body that is the mechanisms, the systems, the processes, the structures. Yeah. And we don't actually start telling people about the soul. What is our 21 grams? Why are we here? What problem are we solving? And making sure we've got people who believe in that purpose.
Absolutely. There's this point you make about technology never being the problem. There's this mentor of mine in the UK, Rory Sutherland. I'm sure you probably know him very, very well.
Come on.
I know.
Come on.
Rory speaks of this concept of an institute of underutilized technologies, and he's been preaching this message for a minute, saying human beings are really wasting technology. And the one that he really spoke to was video conferencing. So when he took off during the COVID season, I'm like, Rory needs to be given a special humanity award for this. But my next question to that will be for those that are absolutely new. Because the challenge that I found with leadership is tech has always been the IT people's problem, right? It has always been the IT people's problem. How do I now, as a leader who's not necessarily techie, embrace this in a way that is holistic and really allows me to cater to the needs of my clients and consumers?
It's simple. You have to focus on the end, not the means. And it's a great question you're asking. So often people who get nervous by technology, it's because they're not technically versed in what the technology is, right? And so it's not uncommon to find a leader who goes, we're not going to do that now because the technology is not right. What actually they mean is, often what they mean is, I don't yet understand this technology well enough to posit a view and to steer it in the direction that can help us, right? So technology is always the means, it's never the end. And what leaders need to do is they need to recognize that all you've got to do is surround yourself with people around you who understand the means. You've got to keep reminding them of what the end is. You've got to keep going, I can see the technology stack that you're talking about. I can understand what it's going to enable us to do. I know the constraints of our environment, and if you're in Africa, you have to have a constrained conversation. But all this notwithstanding, that's where I want us to go, and I'm counting on you guys to make sure that we get there, right? I think that's the difficult part that many leaders battle with, because we do come from an age of technocratic leaders who understood technically the detail of every part of the business. And now all of a sudden they're in an environment where they don't know the detail of every part of the business. They don't know how different technologies connect with each other, or how the mesh works. And for a lot of them, what they're worried about is not only what the technology can enable, but also what risks the business will face. And that's a real question. I mean, it's a real worry, right? Like, okay, I get it. There's going to be risks. But there is a greater risk, I think, to not embarking on the journey, rather than waiting until you understand all of the risks before you embark on the journey.
Awesome. The tail end of that conversation is the ignorant consumer, so to speak. How do I onboard a group of people who are so absolutely ignorant of the technology and might become the only vulnerability in my onboarding process, right? How do I deal with those guys?
Yeah, that's a great question again. So there's a lot of empirical evidence to suggest that actually human beings don't like change. And we know this to be true, I think, at a conceptual level, but there's now been academic research to support this hypothesis that human beings don't like change. And not as in they don't like change to infer that they're resistant to it, but quite the contrary. That if you want human beings to change, they will actively work in the opposite direction. They will unchange. The more digital you want them to go, the more analog they will become. The faster you want them to move, the slower they will become. The more intuitive you want them to get, the more data analytics they'll be based. It's human beings. So the way to do it is you've got to find internal champions who can convert the non-believers. See, it's a bit like, I always say this to my own team, right? I go, so what we've got to do is we've got to find missionaries. And I love missionaries. I love the idea of a missionary, the idea of somebody who takes a book with words in it, and the book with words gives them a particular belief system, and they go into a part of the world where neither the language is understood, nor the word is understood, nor the belief system is understood, and they're not going to be paid for it. But they go into that environment purely because they think they can convert people into believers.
Absolutely.
So when you're doing a transformation project, actually that's what you need a lot of. You need a lot of missionaries who are going to go into the place of work, into the place of trade, into the place where you do business, and are going to evangelize, educate, and transform people for you.
Absolutely.
And so what you want to focus on is just getting a few people who convert a few people who convert a few people. This is a tipping point thing. This is not a throw masses of people at it thing. And I think I've seen organizations do it wrong, where they'll book a room, a conference room, and they'll put all 1,000 employees, and they'll go, great, we're going to tell you guys about our technology. You're definitely not going to get people to buy in that way. What you've got to do is you've got to take a deeper, more nuanced approach. You've got to go department deep, find champions, identify the missionaries, train them, skill them, equip them, and then you've got to let them run with that journey. That's the way that it has traction.
So let's step it up a notch. Because of the different groups of young people we have, and the fact that not everybody is an entrepreneur, let's speak specific to leadership, right? But before we do that, I want us to talk about the African youth. Every time I call that subject matter, I close my eyes because it's like such a complicated, it's like, a puzzle wrapped in an enigma wrapped. It's crazy. There's one particular thing, however, that you speak to that I wanted us to start from. How do we disintegrate the entitlement mentality that we have as young people in Africa?
Woo, man. So, first, I think just to say, mindsets are learned. I'm going to say that again because I think it's important. Mindsets are learned. So your mindset, the way your mind is structured insofar as it relates with the world, is something that you've learned. And having learned it is probably a function of how you've been socialized. It's the people around you. And so your socialization drives your mindset drives your perspective drives how you act in the world. And I think for a lot of us young people, a big part of this entitlement mindset is purely because we're socializing wrong and we're keeping company with the wrong people. So how do you break it, right? First, is you got to ask yourself the question, is it serving you? Because I think there are a lot of people who have that mindset, but who are not served by that mindset. So you've got to ask yourself the question, is this mindset serving me? The second is you've got to ask yourself the question, who do I want to be? And what mindset is it going to take for me to be that person? Because if there is a disconnect between the person I want to be and the mindset I have now, it goes without saying that there's going to be an incongruency and inconsistency, and over time there's going to be a frustration because I'm never going to reach the levels that I want to reach, right?
Yeah.
And so it's important to have a deep internal conversation. And then the third thing is to go, so what mindset do I need and where can I find that mindset?
Yes.
And you've got to start moving into the spaces and into the conversations where that mindset is what's happening, right? So the conversations you're in, the group of people you're hanging around with, the spaces that you're occupying and the spaces that you're allowing to occupy you, that is a big part of how you shift mindset. I don't know any person that ever changed the world by being entitled to it. So, if you want to leave an imprint in the world, it goes without saying that a mindset of entitlement is not going to work. And there's no doubt that as young people in the continent today, all of us want to leave an imprint in the world. Almost all of us. I don't know a single young African who doesn't want to leave this place better than they found it. So that means we need to fundamentally shift our mindsets.
Yeah. Now, I think that this is something that you speak very big on, but I'm asking questions that are very relevant to everyday young people, right? The Uber elite are good, but let's also look at those. And that's something that you're really big about taking innovation to the townships, that very concept. But let us speak in terms of globalization. When we look at young people, we look at the adaptation to digital and the infrastructural challenge that we have in Africa. How do I compete at the same level with somebody in Finland, in the United States, in Canada, when my lights will go off for hours in a day and my internet might not even hold for this conversation to finish? How do I go around that infrastructure curve and be able to bring myself up and my business and my idea to the world?
Again, I really think we need to start moving from a mindset. Again, go back to mindset. We need to start moving from the mindset that says the fact that I lack something should be the drive for me to make sure that I'm more productive. The fact that I lack something should be the drive for me to make sure that I'm more innovative, right? Yeah. So there are things that are structural constraints. In South Africa, not until lockdown, we had lockdown. So we had load shedding. So there was rolling power outages. Those are real structural issues. There's nothing I, Vusi Thembekwayo, as a citizen can do, But what I can do is I can start thinking about when do they schedule the load shedding for? What work can I get done when? And how do I collaborate with people so that even in the instances where I'm at downtime, somebody else is getting work done? So a big part for me of the reason why my organization, my business is global, is precisely so that I can tap into different mindsets and different skill sets in different parts of the world. Like, you're just not going to do business process engineering the way people in India would. It's not going to happen, right? So we'll outsource, as we have done our business process engineering, to that part of the world. It means that I'm now not constrained by the macros of my environment, but actually that I'm tapping into other ecosystems. So somebody's watching this conversation, they're going, yeah, okay, so how does that apply to me, my life, and my work, and my business? So let's think about it logically. Let's imagine you're a young professional and you've got a side hustle or something that you've been wanting to do.
Yeah.
But every single time when you get home, there's no electricity, so you can't do your side hustle. Well, that's an opportunity for you to start thinking about how do you make sure that your side hustle runs even when you're sleeping. So your mindset has got to be, I can't run my side hustle because there's no electricity. The mindset has got to be, my side hustle is got to run even if there's no electricity, right? Yeah. And I think that's the big shift with this thing is this is not a systems question. It's not a process question. It's a mindset question. If you get the mindset right, almost everything else unlocks itself.
Let's touch a little bit on the issue of success because of three intriguing things. Number one, because I think that particularly the media has figured out a way to celebrate only accomplishments and victories, right? So we have a system where there's glorified endings without any highlight on processes and how I got there, right? So that's one. Two, in my part of Africa, we're in West Africa, we're right next to the Nigerians, our brothers. We also live in a place where the end sort of justifies the means. So somebody can drive a Lamborghini or, a G-Wagon, and they don't need to explain. The important thing is they're driving a G-Wagon. And then it makes the person who's putting in the work, who is on the journey, look like they're not really adequate or they're not doing enough. And finally, the very definition of success. To these three things, the myth, the unfortunate societal error of how we're celebrating successes, and what success truly means as well.
I want to start with your last one. So for me, I had to ask myself the question around what does success mean a long time ago? And the reason I had to ask myself that question a long time ago was because it was a fairly long time ago that I started succeeding at some things that I was doing, right? So here's my definition of success. Success is when I have achieved what I wanted without compromising who I am. Now, the second part of that statement is actually very important because there are a lot of people who, to your point, are very happy to compromise who they are just so they can get that success, so they can be seen to be successful.
Yeah.
And I think once you get your definition of what success means, then the journey is a lot simpler. The journey is a lot easier. Let me also just make the point, Kwame. Success is personal, guys. There's no such thing as a communal success. Success is personal. Success is you, and it's for you. It's not for the rest of the world. And I learned this. I was in a place called Liechtenstein, beautiful country. A friend of mine is from there, and a guy called Alex, who was getting married, and he and I did our MBA together in London. He invites me, so I'll go over. It's a tiny little country. I think the population is about 38,000 people, but it's one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And I went into Liechtenstein, and my mindset was, man, this place is one of the highest GDP per capita in the world. It has one of the highest billionaires per square kilometer in the world. There's definitely going to be some serious money here.
Yeah.
Then I got there, and there were these like old, quaint houses, very quiet country lifestyle. I was just like, what is going on? People were driving Rolls Royces that are 40 years old. And I'm from a continent where the Rolls Royce, for you to have money, the Rolls Royce has to be, you have to drive a Rolls Royce manufactured in the year that you're driving it. You know what I mean? Like and so that's when I realized that there is a big difference between being rich and being wealthy.
Yeah.
And a part of that is how wealthy people express wealth. But also another part of that is how rich people find the need to constantly explain themselves.
Yeah.
So the reason you're buying the Lamborghini isn't because you're into cars. You're not buying the Lamborghini because you know the story of the old man Lamborghini, that he actually bought a Ferrari from Enzo Ferrari drove it, and the car broke down, and he took it to Enzo Ferrari, and he said, fix it. And Enzo said, I'm not fixing it. There's nothing wrong with the car. You're a bad driver. And the old man, Lamborghini, used to make tractors, so he decided that he would actually pivot his factory and start making supercars to compete with a Ferrari. That's the story of a Lamborghini. Now, I wonder how many people driving Lamborghinis know the story of the lineage, right?
Yeah.
And where things come from. So that means we're buying into these possessions, not because we're buying into what they represent or the story, but because we're buying into what people are going to think about us.
Yeah.
So we're externalizing what we think is success. That's an incredibly dangerous thing to do, because I got to tell you, no matter how much money you make, there'll always be somebody with more.
Yeah.
No matter how wealthy you get, there'll always be somebody wealthier. And no matter how many material possessions you have, there'll always be somebody with more material possessions.
Yeah.
But I do think, though, that you and I are not going to win this battle. I don't think we win this battle. I think MTV Cribs, beat us to the post 15 years ago when they started doing MTV Cribs.
Yeah.
I think Pimp My Ride beat us to it. And I think we've definitely raised this very materialistic generation that I'm not really worried anymore about how do I convert the masses to understand what true wealth is. Yeah. I'm worried about how do I educate people who are asking themselves the question, what is true wealth? Because it's a lot easier to teach somebody who's asking a question than to try and convert somebody who thinks they know everything.
They know already, yeah. Absolutely. Let's let Vusi take a sip. And now that we have our peak audience, I just wanted to speak to belief systems, right? And how dreams come true. The reason I wanted to put this story up is because a lot of people think that there's no way you start from zero with nothing, and with no connections, no political affiliations, you can still get there. So 7 years ago, when I watched your first interview, your 22-year-old interview, where you speak about the fact that when you speak to people and you see the glimmer in the eye and the spark, you remember that. So when I watched that video that day, I said, I want to be like him, and one day I'll meet him. And what I've learned in this journey is once you have somebody who has a blueprint of where you're going and you are able to connect with them, and I didn't know you anywhere, you were a big dog in an industry that I was studying in, but I said to myself, I'll go do the work, and in the right time, it would align, right? And all of this started with the movie when we watched the Thanos movie last year. And we saw what Marvel did before the last one came, and we had a conversation. And you say, "Hey, Futures, you're supposed to know what happens."
I remember that I was in Paris, and I went to watch it, and I was like, "What just happened?" And you and I ended up having the conversation. I remember.
And so, guys, I just wanted to say this for you to understand. I don't know if we can give credit to Corona, but this lockdown has paved a way and opened doors in ways that I could never have imagined. But all of that is being built on a certain belief system. Yeah. Some 7 years ago, starting from scratch, I said one day, this man who is a blueprint, a complete blueprint of where I want to go, I'm going to be able to connect, and then going to put in the work. Not focusing on that thing that I wanted to happen, and it eventually aligns. So I think that belief system would be important for a lot of us who are starting from zero. And I don't know what you want to say about that.
I think you're on the money. So let me first just say a few things, right? Woo, man, Kwame, you hit the nail on the head. Look, there is nothing in human endeavor that has never been done before. I'm going to say it again. There is nothing in human endeavor that has never been done before. Number one. Number two, nobody in the world is smarter than you. They're just at a different point in their journey.
Yeah.
So what you got to realize is when you don't know something, it doesn't mean you're not intelligent. It means you're not yet at that part of the journey. I think it's because we come from this mindset where our education system is built to graduate us, not built to teach us to question things. So we go to school with the idea that I've got to learn information, put it in my head, repeat it in an exam or a test, then I graduate and I'm qualified. And the idea is that once I'm qualified, I'm a qualified pilot, a qualified lawyer, a qualified banker, a qualified speaker. The minute I'm qualified, I stop learning because I know everything now. And what I want to say is you have to recognize that we are all on a journey. We're all learning. I have this mindset. I always talk to my team about the mindset of a white belt. So I don't want any black belts in my teams. I only want white belts. And even for myself, I never want to be the black belt. And what
Yeah.
that means is every single time where I feel like I've mastered something, I've got to move on to the next thing. And when I feel like I've mastered that thing, I've got to move on to the next thing. That's because what happens, and it's just the final statement on this. So here's what happens, right? So I start out in an industry like venture capital. I don't know much about it. I've got a little bit of money. I want to start investing in businesses. I don't know everything. So what do? I start moving in circles with people who understand this thing.
Yeah.
I start listening to their language. I listen to how they speak. I look at the relationships they have. I look at how they move, and I go, okay, so that's how this thing works. Then as I get into it and I start learning it, I open myself to the possibility that I don't know everything.
Yeah.
So at a different level, I'm always learning how to deal with that devil. Once I've dealt with that devil, I move on to the next level. There's going to be a different devil there too, right? But one of the most amazing things I've realized is I've had people who have opened doors to me because they saw me do the work. No one's going to open the door to you because you ask them. They're going to open the door to you because they can see you doing the work. And there is a consistency in your toil. There is a humility and a deliberateness in your effort that they can see, and they just like, look, we might as well, There's that old expression by Denzel Washington. He says, you hang around the barbershop long enough, you have to get a haircut.
You will get a haircut.
Sooner or later, the barber's going to go, hey, yo, my chair is empty, jump in.
All right, so we have about 15 minutes to go, guys. If you have questions, please put it in the questions box so that we can get Vusi to... Well, my next question will be a very interesting one. And the reason why it is very, very interesting is because, like I said, I'm asking questions that I know are relevant to everyday young people. Can we talk a little bit about the concept of wealth? And I think we spoke about it a little when we spoke about success. Where is money in the equation, right? There was one thing I learned from you 3-4 years ago about delayed gratification, changed everything for me. And I started understanding that the fact that I have enough money from a contract to buy a car doesn't mean I should buy a car. Can we speak to where money is in the equation of growth and progress?
Whew. Kwame, you ask really good questions, man. God damn, you ask good questions. So, one of the tragedies about money is, I think, if you study the history of money, money is a means of exchange. That's all it is.
Yeah.
We took the concept of value and we apportioned value to money. We did that. Money never did that, right? Yeah. So what we have done now as a society is we have done this thing where we've said, unless a person has X amount of money, they then therefore are not worth the value of my time, the value of my effort, or the value of any of those things.
Yeah.
And that has been incredibly dangerous for us. So where does money fit into the equation? I'm going to answer you like this. My relationship with money goes something like this. Have enough that I never have to worry about where the next meal is going to come from. But always make sure that I treat money as a multiplier rather than money as a definer. And there's a difference between those two. Kwame comes to me and says, hey, Vusi, I'd like to do something with you. And I go, how much money do you have? That's me thinking about money as a definer. It means I'm trying to understand the value Kwame is going to add to the conversation based on how much money Kwame has. And every single time you do that, you're going to lose. I'm busy right now with a young entrepreneur, young guy, early 30s, getting into the financial services industry, raising some angel funding. And I said to him, I'm going to come in, I'm going to play with you. Why? Because I like his mindset. I like where he's at.
Yeah.
Money as a multiplier is when you move into spaces where you say to people, so I have a little bit, but I'm really trying to figure out how do I make the little bit I have go as far as possible.
Yeah.
And it's not just about how we treat our own money, but it's also about how we allow other people to interact with us and our relationship with money, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, man, that's my relationship with it.
Absolutely. Now let's speak about one last key thing, and then we'll just crown it up with some questions and then a little bit on public speaking. I think that for me, apart from the fact that we both are extremely conscious of the divine, because I literally do nothing without a divine intuition of sorts, you know. So the question is, for me, I think my most defining moment in life was the day that I discovered that whatever it is that I want to know is somewhere.
Yeah.
And just the value of knowledge, period. Being able to
Yep.
control the flow of information, right?
Yeah.
What is knowledge to anybody who's looking at achieving anything in this world? What is the role of knowledge in that journey?
Before I even answer the question around what is the role of knowledge, I'm going to give you, I have this thing that I call the knowledge maturity matrix, right? And often when I talk to executive leaders and executive teams, I always have to break this down for them because I think we misunderstand it. So there is a difference between information, data, knowledge, insights, and wisdom. Those are not the same things. That's why in the English language, they literally have different names.
Yes.
Data is a point of data that's raw. It often lacks context. The minute you take the, and data is something like two dogs. Two what? Two dogs what?
Right? Nothing. Yeah.
The minute I go, two German Shepherds, that's information. I've now taken the data points and I've given it a bit more context. The minute I say to you, two German Shepherds running down the road, that is now a little bit of what we call insight.
Insight.
Because what I've now done is I've given you not only the fact that there is two dogs running, but now you can start thinking, also there's a road and they're running. It means they're acting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The minute, and then I say to you, two German Shepherds running down the road because the owner called them, right?
Yeah.
So immediately your mind is going to jump to, hold on, why did the owner call the dog? And that's why the wisest people are always asking questions. Do you know what I just did there? See what I just did there? So wisdom is not about getting to a point of knowing what the insight or the information is. Wisdom is about getting to a point where you can ask the question, based on the information that you got.
Oh my God.
Boom. So, in your quest,
full stop.
In your quest for whatever you're doing, always seek wisdom. Wisdom. The wisdom, and wisdom is about having enough information to ask good questions. That's what wisdom's about.
Woo.
I was in a board meeting literally before we started the session. That's why I was 4 minutes late. I was in a board meeting and I was sitting back in the board meeting listening. And I have the privilege of having an incredible chairman of this particular board that I sit on. He's an amazing man. And I was just listening and listening. And when he came to me and he was like, yo, give us your thoughts, I was able to add value because I came from a point of wisdom. And my thoughts weren't me pontificating. My thoughts were me asking good questions because I was listening the whole time.
Yeah.
And I think the question I want to ask everybody in this conversation is, how much are you listening? You're in lockdown, man. You're in isolation. Are you listening? Are you listening to your body? Are you listening to your relationships? Are you listening to the universe? Are you listening to your creator? Are you listening? Because if you're not listening, you're going to miss it. And if you miss it, the wisdom's going to miss you. It ain't going to hit you.
Okay, so we're taking questions now. Because we have 9 minutes to go. He says, how do I overcome feelings of inadequacy where entrepreneurship is concerned?
Simple. Throw information at it. The quickest way to overcome feelings of inadequacy is to throw information at it. The reason you're feeling inadequate is because deep down inside, you know that you don't know everything. Yeah. And so what you want to do is you want to start getting in as many hours as possible of getting information. The way to get rid of insecurity is to throw information at insecurity. Sooner or later, you start sitting in conversations and going, oh, I know what they're talking about. And that's how you begin to eat away at that level of insecurity.
Great. Somebody says, how can one source for investors and not reveal the whole idea to avoid piracy in Africa?
I mean, so I think here's a question. Why would you talk to people that you're afraid are going to steal your idea? That says a lot about the people you're going to.
Absolutely.
right? So sometimes I think in the questions we ask, the answer is implied. I work with entrepreneurs, I finance entrepreneurs. I never sign a non-disclosure agreement. I never sign a non-disclosure agreement. Because, if you say to me, you're going to come up with an idea about, how to make little cappuccino packs, how do you know that somebody hasn't already come up with that idea and they just didn't move with it yet?
Yeah.
So, and then I want to say one more thing. There is no such thing as the first idea or the first person with an idea. Only the first person to execute that idea. So what you got to do is you got to get your ass ready to execute as much as possible, as fast as possible. The discipline is in the execution. It's not in the idea. It's in the execution.
Absolutely. Let's touch on, as we're wrapping up, let's touch on public speaking and communication as a whole and what it looks like as a business, right? Because especially in this part, in Nigeria, they're beginning to have sort of a burgeoning industry. You sort of took the lead. You also disrupted the industry in a lot of ways because you didn't go with signing with agencies. You went and you sort of did your own thing. But talk to us just generally, 3 minutes, about the prospects of that particular industry and why people should start really thinking about it as a career path.
Man, let me tell you, it's the best way to travel and see the world, the best way to build your network, the best way to build your exposure, and the best way to build a capital base is to do what we do. It literally is to do what we do. So the reason for me, I've never really, I haven't found it difficult to get people to believe in my businesses, concurrent to my public speaking careers, because I had the networks and I was able to tap into them.
Yeah.
So, every market has an entry point, and there's people who control the customers. The best thing you want to do when you want to get into this game is you have to build your brand.
Yeah.
And that's about building top of mind in people's minds what you stand for and who you are. So there's a reason my very first book, I sold 6,000 copies the day it was launched in Barcelona in Spain. Today it was sold over 100,000 copies. There's a reason that book is called the Magna Carta of Exponentiality. It's because I wanted it to be known for the rest of my career that if you're having a conversation about exponentiality, you got to have me in the room.
Yeah.
Now, I'm working on other books. We've got 2 books, by the way, that are completed, 2 that I've written, 2 that are completed, ready for publication, and 3 other books that I'm busy working on at the moment. But top of mind, I wanted people to know exactly who I am and exactly what I'm about. So get your branding right. And then the second thing you got to get right, and then this is the final thing, is get your associations right. A lot of people are associating incorrectly, and because you're associating incorrectly, people think you are the people you're hanging with, rather than you are who you are. So so I want to ask you, if somebody's listening to this conversation and thinking about becoming a public speaker, here's a question for you. Who do you follow on social media? Who do you follow on Twitter? What threads and conversations are you commenting on? What articles are you reading? Every single day, man, I read 3 consistent news portals. I read Bloomberg on my terminal, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times. Absolutely. Then I'm tapping into the Reuters TV network to understand what's happening. That's every day. That's before I answer any emails, before I make any phone calls. I get my brain tapped into what's happening in the world around me.
Absolutely.
So the networks that you keep, it's not just about the people you keep, but also the networks of information that you choose to tap into.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So we're going to let Vusi wrap it up with his final words to us. There's so many questions. I don't know if we'll figure out a way to do a part 2 or something. But I also understand how crazy it has been to get a hold of you. So we see about that. But I am keeping this up for 24 hours. It's going to be here. So you guys can get it again. And of course, it would be on my podcast latest by tomorrow. So you guys could go grab that. But thank you so much. Before we let you go, what would be your final words to every single young person, every person, period, listening to you as a takeaway message? If they forget everything else we spoke about, what's the one thing they need to remember?
I believe in this and I live by this, so I'll share it with you guys. Belief precedes achievement. Achievement does not precede belief. So if you're sitting out there and you don't believe in yourself and you're waiting until you achieve something before you believe in yourself, you've got the equation the wrong way around. You've got to believe in you first.
Yeah.
And what that means is you've got to believe in you, you've got to believe in your dreams, you've got to believe. Because if you don't believe, then what's the point? Right?
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of people walking around looking for evidence to support their beliefs rather than knowing intrinsically and internally that your belief is valid. The minute you have the idea, that's the belief. God put that idea in your mind. So that, because he knew you could do it. So who are you to keep doubting you?
Yeah.
This belief precedes achievement. Achievement does not precede belief.
Absolutely, guys. So those who are crying for part 2, please go to Vusi's page and go right just part two until he decides for us to do it. No, is that something we could consider?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So should we make it back to back? Tomorrow is a holiday in Ghana. I don't know about other places.
Yeah, it's a holiday in South Africa. Let's look at doing something next week.
Next week, right?
Yeah.
Great. So we speak about that, guys. We'll try and bring you a part 2. But thank you so much. This is a dream come true for me. I'm sure it's a dream come true for a lot of people. My business partner, Jifa Grace, says a special hi. She's crazy about your content. I'll connect you guys when this is done. But thank you so much for coming. Those of you who are asking the podcast, it's called Future Conversations. It's on iTunes, it's on Spotify. If you go on my page right now, you will see it and you'll be able to get the link. Vusi, it's been a mind-blowing conversation. Let's try and get that part 2 for next week. Thank you so much on behalf of everybody. We cannot wait to do this again.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Enjoy the rest of the day. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much. One of the best conversations we ever had. Bring your comments. Come into my DM. I'll try and grab Vusi for part 2. You go on my page. You would be able to see our podcast so that you can get that. But this is going to be live for another 24 hours, so you can come back and watch it. Enjoy the rest of the day. Stay healthy. Stay home. Be strong for us. A big thank you to all Pajamas Millionaires. Thank you for tuning in for 1 great hour. I would see you guys next week on Global Conversations. Tomorrow I'm going on holiday. Enjoy the rest of the day. Shalom. Cheers, guys.